Timothy Shields. Is a partner and business unit leader in Kelly Cronenberg's Fort Lauderdale office. Kelly Cronenberg is a large and very quickly growing law firm that's now started in Fort Lauderdale, but now has more of a national footprint. He focuses his practice on technology, intellectual property, and sports and entertainment law. He has a unique blend of legal expertise and technical knowledge. He provides comprehensive legal services in areas including copyright, trademark, the digital economy, data privacy, data breach response, and contract negotiations and disputes. In his role at Kelly Cronenberg, he represents a wide range of clients, including startup companies, athletes, social media influencers, and content creators. He also advises clients on critical cybersecurity and data privacy issues, ensuring compliance with regulations such as FTC guidelines, FERPA, and HIPAA. He's also a registered NFL agent. That one usually gets a little... Prior to joining Kelly Cronenberg, Tim was a software developer at Nova Southeastern University. His background in technology and higher education, which I'll talk about in a second, provides him with valuable insights that inform his approach to intellectual property and data privacy law. We are not done. Timothy's educational journey is as impressive as it is diverse. He earned his Bachelor of Science and Master's degrees in Higher Education Administration from the University of Central Florida. He then obtained a master's degree in Computer Information Science and Systems, and then a doctorate in Organizational Leadership from Nova Southeastern University. While working full-time as a developer, Tim got his law degree at NSU Shepherd Broad College of Law, which is an amazing accomplishment, but he actually graduated summa cum laude and was their valedictorian first graduating class while working full-time. I just want to reiterate that. He is currently furthering his expertise. Oh, he actually just completed, we did this back in October, so in October and now, just completed an LLM in intellectual property from the University of New Hampshire. He's also a certified information privacy professional, with advanced certifications in LexisNexis and Westlaw, and a black belt in Lean Six Sigma. Timothy Shields, everybody.
My mom wrote that.
She did a wonderful job. So what we want to talk about, are some of the most, the AI legal risks. I think it's something that I know historically meaning before Tim and I started talking about this back in September, we kind of ignored. So can you just start off with some of what the most urgent AI-related legal risks CIOs and organizations should be addressing right now?
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I love attending these events where everyone gets all hyped up and then they bring in legal, bring everything down. But the number one risk when I'm working with clients who, software companies, whatever my client base is, the number one risk is that they have no AI guidance policy at all. So when I'm talking to a new client, I say, what is your AI policy? And they say, well, we don't have one. I said, well, your AI policy then is do whatever you want, right? You're telling every employee, download whatever you find, you get a TikTok ad for some cool AI thing that will read all your emails. That's great. So the number one, the very first thing that any of my clients do is we just have a discussion about what you want your employees to do with AI. Let them know what tools they can use. The answer cannot be no tools, right? That's not acceptable. They'll ignore that. Let them know what it is, how they can use it, and then what is the process to onboard new AI tools.
Right. By the way, we want to make this interactive. If you have questions, please. But don't most organizations have data and privacy policies at this point?
Well,
that was a trick question.
So most companies have either a cookie cutter data privacy policy that doesn't really truly reflect the data that they have. Many organizations that I work with, especially if we're doing post-breach, so they called me after they've had a data breach. They don't know what type of data they have. They don't know where it is. They don't know what they're allowed to do with it. They don't know where it came from sometimes. And so AI policy and the risks that AI can generate for you is often rooted in data privacy law across the US or in regulated institutions.
Can you talk a little bit about the risks from an AI perspective?
Yeah, so just from a data privacy perspective first, we'll look at some of your AI risks are going to be, and I like to call it like unsupervised AI, right? So you have some type of tool that you're allowing to either look at data that maybe it shouldn't be, or make decisions that you're not watching. I use the analogy of think of your AI tool as a new employee, right? You wouldn't hire a brand new employee on the first day, say, here's all of our stuff, good luck, I'll check in with you later, right? So that's, and people use their AI tools like that, which is extremely risky because you're responsible for the actions that it takes, right? And so, as any tech project, any tech implementation, you have your risks. If my CPA messes up my taxes, I'm not going to blame Excel, right? I'm going to blame my CPA. Or I draft a bad legal memo, we're not going to hold Word accountable, right? So it's me. But the unique part with AI, as we've seen, the transformation that is available to us through, in business, is its ability to make decisions and take action, and those actions are your responsibility. So, my self-driving car, if we get an accident, it's still my fault because I'm sitting in the passenger seat. So, you want to monitor, human in the loop. You don't want your AI defaming people in chat, making discriminatory employment decisions, those sorts of things that can cause real consequences.
When we last did this, you said that you had at the time 65 active cases that you were working on with your clients around this topic. Has that number gone up?
That number has gone up slightly. We've been able to resolve some of those other ones. And a lot of those cases revolve around people so businesses who have a data set and they give AI access to that data set, and either one, the client did not consent for the data to be used in that way, so you violate. Right? So someone gave you, so I fill out a form, right? I'm a consumer, I fill out a form online. I'm giving you that information because I want information on your services and products, right? I didn't give you permission to use my data to train your AI model. Right? That could be an issue. And as states, most data privacy law, especially for consumers, at state level. We don't have a federal consumer data privacy law, so we're dealing with all the states and in other countries as well, depending on your scope, unless it's a regulated industry, finance, and health, education. So those are the types of state-level consumer problems that people are having.
Right. Are you seeing a trend one way or the other to different kinds of cases, both of your own or others in the industry that are starting to come out? Are they being consumer-driven lawsuits about, hey, you didn't use my data the way I told you? Is it more from a decision process where a decision was made to either say yes or deny some form of services? Like, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so at the federal level, if it's a federal case, there's been a number of, I'm not involved in these, but employment discrimination cases or adverse action related to the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So someone was usually denied credit based on an AI model, and the plaintiff says that they were discriminated against based on a protected class
Mhm.
that they belong to.
Okay. I'm sure none of the people here in this room have any experience with shadow AI in their organizations. But from a legal perspective, a liability perspective, how should organizations be focusing legal AI governance around shadow AI?
Yeah, no, and I think, if you have good IT management practices, your AI framework is going to be similar, if not a little broader, just because of your data. But getting back to what we very talked about at the beginning is having that AI policy, saying this is what you can do, this is what you cannot do, and if you want to do something that's not yes or no, what is the process to get that approved? Yeah.
When you finish that question, sorry.
So that committee, is going to be, of course, your IT, your HR, CFO perhaps, and then executive leadership to build that policy, because it has to be enforced both through process and through technical tools.
So my question is a little bit different. So we have an AI policy at the county. We're fortunate that we, CIO, have a relationship with our county attorney, have our own lawyer for all technology. We caught a vendor bringing in meta glasses into a meeting. Thank goodness that they weren't powered on. We recognized it right away. So the question I have for you is this. How should our AI policy deal with the wearables coming in from the vendor community? How do we enforce that? Because people bring in their smartwatches, their smartphones. What are you seeing on those kind of things for us to put into our policy so that we have visibility that you can't take a screenshot, can't take a picture, anything in that part?
I actually have two cases where someone has used meta glasses for, to capture an interaction. The tricky part is it was in public, so it's
But we caught it on county
on
property.
county
So we
property.
want to take our policy.
Yeah,
It's very narrow.
Yeah.
What you can and can't do. We have rules for that, but we want to augment it with those kind of things. Very specifically, when on county property, you cannot use these devices in county meetings.
yeah. Now, if it's a public meeting, then it might be.
We know
different
there's
set of
there's
rules,
sunshine
right,
laws for
yeah,
that.
Yeah,
But if I'm having a one-on-one with, let's say Murray comes in,
Yeah.
unfortunately he left his other glasses at home and he has his meta glasses in
I'm
there.
gonna turn these off here.
Taking this snapshot, my policy should say that is not permitted on county property.
right.
So I want to know, has anybody approached you about that yet?
I've had a couple conversations. We've talked about how they could physically, signage, that sort of thing.
Right.
But
Our lawyers and I are already talking
Yeah.
about that right
I have
now.
my phone in my pocket and it's recording this
We
conversation.
get that,
right? Yeah.
but Florida
Yeah.
law requires 2 cent requirements for
Right.
recording. So if I don't consent, you're violating the
Right.
law, basically.
Unless there's no expectation of privacy.
But we know everything's in the public domain.
Right,
So that
so
takes
it's-
that away.
right.
So
So-
coming back to the Senate question about Meta.
Yeah.
How do we do that legally in a way that is germane to the county, that hey, we can have a meeting, but that class cannot come in?
Yeah. I think the best you can do is that they're not powered on. Right? I mean,
We
so
have to see, of course.
right. Yeah. Right.
I get that.
Yeah. So.
But can that be, I'm curious because we've talked about this with our lawyers, and we want to have specific language that says certain things without being so prescriptive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you have a couple of examples that you can share?
Yeah, no, not off the top of my head, but yeah. But wearables is a big problem. Yeah, and I've actually talked to a state legislator about that because it does address that whole in public expectation of privacy. But if we're this close down the conversation,
Right. But I can count in a meeting 6 smartwatches going off simultaneously.
Right. Right.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We get that, but it's the meta glasses that we're having a challenge.
So I actually just ordered my prescription.
Then make sure to keep you out of our office.
Turn them off when
Turn
they're
them
on.
off.
But they're only for distance.
Glasses,
They're only for
right?
distance.
So is having an AI policy, I'm sorry, do you have a question? Oh, please.
Yeah, I do actually. There's a tag team over here.
Yeah.
So you talked about the AI policy. That's the first question you asked. What is your AI policy? Then you went in and started talking about like what apps are you downloading. So my question is that when we talk about web applications, so there's a plethora of AI
Yep.
web applications that are accessible to all employees,
Yep.
very easily accessible, because downloads, we can restrict that by adding restrictions. But when you talk about web applications, you can also restrict them, but they're constantly creating them, so
Yes.
just keep up with that.
Yep.
What can organizations do to protect themselves, as it relates to that scenario?
Yeah, so this is both a technical, right, so keep whack-a-moling, but also an educational. If you explain to your team, like, this is what you can use and why we want you to use this and not other things, right? You have to discourage the behavior, and then if you can't, prevent it, and then if you can't, then that's when HR gets involved.
Please.
Yeah, that's the question. So Timothy, the onslaught of AI changes, huge. We're moving very quickly. I'm probably not the only one in the room whose risk and compliance group is overwhelmed. We have a very progressive, younger, sort of generationally competent risk and compliance officer, but they're becoming somewhat of a bottleneck with the speed of change. They need an explanation. What is someone is asking for? What does it do? Getting on their calendar takes time, and the frustration from the end user.
Yeah.
What are some of the strategies we can employ to educate? I mean, hiring 10 more risk and compliance people probably is not the answer, but would you recommend? What are some of the strategies we can take to
Okay,
accelerate?
well, this is a biased answer, but this is when you bring in technically inclined outside counsel. So some of my clients is general counsel for a company. They're like, look, we're a real estate company. We have 11 real estate attorneys. We don't know anything about this. These come to me. So, other than that, just increasing throughput is difficult. You could probably use some AI tools to speed things along as well. But,
Just make sure they're compliant.
Yeah,
with
right. I can give you an example. In their previous presentation, they talked about contract review, and I do a ton of contracts. I do a ton of social media stuff, and here's a real risk. So I draft a contract and I send it to the creator. In this case, I'm representing the brand. We want to hire you. They take that contract that I just sent them, they load it probably into the free version of ChatGPT, and they send me back their comments. And because they don't know what they're doing, they're not attorneys, and they don't really know how to write prompts, they send me feedback that strengthens the contract in my client's favor. So like, these are the changes we want. I'm like, absolutely. I'll send this right over for signature. Yeah, they did, because they wrote, the prompt probably was, right, the prompt probably was, how can I improve this contract? Right. Like, change the exclusivity from 6 months to 12 months. They're like, yeah, let's do that. So, but it's a very simple example, but this is poorly implemented and designed and used of an AI tool. Now, do I use AI tools to pull out contract details? Yeah, absolutely. I also know how to write prompts, right? So, do I have associates who use AI tools and then they send me drafts and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. So, you gotta be extremely careful with that. But that was a great example of a poorly implemented tool
Right.
that can create a lot of problems.
Can you talk a little bit about regulated industries, insurance, finance, healthcare? Like, what are you seeing there compared to like the rest of us? Right? Are you, because one of the things when I would be working with some of our insurance clients, I'm like, go ahead and explain to 50 different state insurance commissioners, right, how your underwriting AI engine works when you don't understand how it works and they have no idea what you're talking about. Like, what are you seeing there in terms of like the regulated industries?
Yeah, so healthcare, probably the strictest when it comes to using patient data or using AI to interact with patient data. Your vendors, that's a big concern in the healthcare industry, is what the vendors are using for, their productivity tools, your billing entity, are they consuming this data? So we're being very strict when it comes to healthcare, making really very carefully making sure, because the fines could be astronomical very quickly.
Another question with respect to social media policies and language and using things with citizens. Sometimes the agents may act as a de facto social media interpreter. How do you get the agent to inform consent to things going out in the marketplace as far as their privacy policy? And are you following the AI Bill of Rights that's going through the state right now? And what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, let's see. So the AI Bill of Rights, I don't think it will become law yet. So that's my thoughts on that. Automating social media posts and interacting with folks, that's a great example of something, especially for a government agency, I would recommend against.
Because one thing we see from a threat perspective is that you have like a more frequent amount of agents running around, they can create offensive threats and they can use that data to create social media posts without consent requirements. Can our policies work in conjunction to protect that or prevent those kind of things? Have you seen anything in your practice like that?
I haven't seen anything like that. I think that would, from the policy side, I think that'd be more of a technical solution to.
Probably
Yeah.
the same guy.
Yeah. To address that.
All right.
CIO, Chief Legal Officer, Chief Compliance Officer, Chief Data Officer, CEO, CFO, like where does this responsibility lie? To create that true, functional AI policy that allows an organization to actually use AI, but not to let it go run amok.
Oh, there's a question.
Yeah, my question is more like the HIPAA side of things. In an organization that has to be HIPAA forward, what kind of challenges have you seen when trying to make a AI guidance policy? I know you said it has to be very strict, but like what are some of your wins? What are definitely things you have to leave off the table when it comes to that?
Yeah, I think so. And let me click. I don't think the AI policy needs to be strict, to use your word, but it has to be clear. It has to be explicit, and this is what we allow, this is what we don't allow, and this is how we can make additional requests. I think some of the wins that we've seen, one client, we drafted a policy, just a very basic policy to start with. You can use, this, you can use Copilot, and we identified just a handful of tools that they could use. Obviously, people are like, oh, I didn't know we had that available to us. Right? And then you very quickly get people just rowing the boat in the same direction, and they start to see some productivity gains just from using the same tools. And then we had some other people who said, oh, well, I used this. Obviously, the company didn't know that they were using that. And there were some significant security concerns with that from their CIO perspective. And, they pulled back from that, and, they felt that was positive. And then when people become more comfortable across the organization with AI, not just a few, evangelists, but you have a broader adoption, then it was easier for them to start building some AI tools or building AI into their existing, homegrown solutions. So that's how I've seen it improve. But to your point, who's in charge of this?
Yeah, where does it, what's the driver?
Yeah, it really has to be a committee, and I hate to say that. But because you need technical, HR, legal, and executive, maybe sales, if you're a sales-driven organization, sales is a big user of AI tools. It makes sense, right? There's a lot in the sales process that can benefit from automation and AI. That's who has to be at the table, because it really does take everyone to implement this policy, because otherwise, someone's just gonna download something on their phone and they're gonna tie it into their Microsoft account, and the next thing you know, they have an AI tool writing emails for them and no one knows what this tool is.
They're gone.
Yeah.
What about, I saw your partner Vanessa talk, and one of the things she talked about was all of the platforms that we use that have embedded AI, that aren't AI platforms in and of themselves. So she talked about that, and I know I do that. I have a platform I use that helps me create PowerPoints, right? But also she talks about when you're signing these contracts with the various vendors at the enterprise level, is the pushback that you can actually do to push some of the responsibility back to them, because you don't really know what they have in their platforms. Can you talk to those two things?
Yeah, of course, the larger your organization is, the better chance you have of pushing back on any type of terms of service or use policy for any tool that has embedded AI components to it, whether they're standard delivery or an add-on. Obviously, the smaller they are, the more you can leverage that. Where you can maybe get some pushback, or where you can make some progress, is around liability limitations, maybe removing some of those liability caps if their AI tool does something that creates liability, whether it does a copyright infringement or defames someone in chat, which is a situation that I'm working on right now. This person got in an argument with the AI service chatbot, and the chatbot started accusing them of crimes. So I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And the funniest part was the business was actually closed that day, and the person's initial question was, "Are you open?" And yes, and then the person said, "Are you an A?" And it just was going in like in a circle. And they said, "Are you a real person or are you an AI?" And I said, "Of course I'm a real person."
Are you talking about podcast?
Yeah,
it was.
There were some guardrails that were.
Yeah. There's a few default settings that were left on in that one. So,
but what about in general? Like, because everything has AI embedded in it. Like I said, I use an online platform that when I want to create a PowerPoint, I use it. It has AI embedded in it. As much as I try to not ever put client information, I mean, that's something where, like, I'm realizing sometimes I'm creating, and I'm just sitting right here, so I'm being very careful with my words. I'm creating PowerPoints for clients.
right.
There might be something in there that, as much as I try to never do this,
Yeah.
like what? How does a policy encompass all of that?
Yeah. So one thing that I do, if I'm drafting a letter, let's say that's easy, right? So, of course, I have specialized tools that have zero retention and that sort of thing. But I still, just best practice, I don't put the client's name in. I'll say ABC company and then let it draft it, and then afterwards use Copilot to switch it. But that's one thing that I'll do. But it's really that's about education, right? Teaching your team what you want them to do, with that. I think it's more on the education, which is where you get your HR folks involved.
Which is worse, having an AI policy that you don't enforce, or not having an AI policy?
Having a policy that you don't enforce. So, the Federal Trade Commission the one big hammer that they have to go after companies is this umbrella of deceptive and unfair trade practices. And state of Florida, every state has this as well, but the FTC. And so what they will say is, what are your policies? So data breach, for instance. Let me see your security policy. Here it is. Did you do this? No. Deceptive and unfair trade practice, $10 million fine. Right? So not doing what you say you're going to do is allowed. Now, do not interpret that to say, well, to be safe, let's not have a policy, because that also will get you in trouble as well.
That's second bad.
That's if we had to rank them, right? But the takeaway is that Tim said don't get a policy to be safe.
What metrics should go along with some of these policies? Are there metrics? How can we be sure that the policies, when you're writing them, have self-enforcement?
You know, I think like I've worked with one of my clients, you know, and so, you know, we're pulling through IT, we're pulling logs of websites that are visited. And then we look, oh wait, you know, a lot of people go in here. Right, so we start identifying, we say this is not an approved site, we block it, and you start working, you know, through that cycle. It's really why it's everyone should be involved. Anonymous surveys, who's attending the training, are people making suggestions of tools? We had like at one company, we had like an AI amnesty period, truth and reconciliation process where people were bringing forward the AI tools that they were using, and we worked to either onboard them or give them an alternative tool that was on the approved list. So with the promise that, you know, nothing bad would happen to them. So if they came forward during this specific window. So,
Here's your penance, right?
yes, exactly.
In terms of risks of using the tools that are out there now from a generative AI perspective, is there a department or a function within an organization which skews more risky than others that are less risky to use these tools?
So, first is sales. I've seen the most risk there because they will generate an email or a letter, and they will either it will include features of the product and the features don't exist. You know, the pricing is not correct, whatever, right? So, because AI will just, you know, AI is a text generator, right? So it will generate the text and fill in the gaps that it doesn't know. So that's the first, as far as volume, that's probably the biggest risk area. Second is legal from the perspective of people using AI to evaluate contracts or legal documents or draft legal documents, and they're not attorneys, and they're either not identifying something that is a risk, or they, you know, put in something that they should not have.
What about HR, marketing, finance, operations?
Yeah, HR. If they're using like the Workday lawsuit you've probably heard of, where they have discriminatory outcomes, I think that has scared a lot of HR folks. I haven't had any HR stuff. Finance, I haven't personally dealt with anything. And sales and marketing, I kind of blended together, but yeah.
All right. Quick wins CIOs can do as they approach their organizations. Like, where do those quick wins in terms of, you know, legal governance? We'll talk about in a second about just regular governance and how this applies to it. But any quick wins, any places that they should start if they haven't already? Or
yeah, I mean, just to go back, you know, to what my foundational concern is get that initial policy in place, even if it is just, hey, if you want to use an AI tool, send an email to IT support, right? It just, something, you gotta start building a fence, right? Or a lane, however big that fence is before you corral it in, but, you gotta send the dog out to start getting the flock in order, right? Yeah. So that's the first step you have to take.
I mean, we spend, not a lot, but some of our time talking with our clients around data governance, around now AI governance. But usually we don't have their legal team involved in a lot of those conversations. It's really about the use of data, the use of AI, but not from a legal perspective. Are you seeing that? The legal teams becoming more and more involved, over time?
I think so, and maybe it's just user bias because they're bringing me in, to talk about this, but, companies that have a lot of data, whether it's a lot of sales data or a regulated industry, one of the biggest, this is not AI specific, but a lot of companies just really don't know what data they have, where it is, and what they're allowed to do with it. And, this is a very typical question. Do you store credit card information? No, we don't. You don't have credit cards written down anywhere? No, we don't. You sure? Well, let me check. We don't. You don't? Just a few. Right. So,
I had a client that had the longitudinal health data, birth to death of 130 million Americans that was unsecured.
thanks.
And I showed them with the number of records, it's a $10,000 fine for every single record, right? And I showed them how they had a $1.4 trillion possible deficit that they would need to pay a fine on.
Yeah, a client wanted to send unsolicited text messages to like 4 million people. And I said, well, that's going to be about $11 billion fine. They're like, nah, let's probably not do that.
Are you starting to see those types of things though, like specifically with AI? Like there's specific laws about, especially healthcare data, right? Keeping it secure, and they were doing things that wasn't keeping it necessarily as secure as they should have. Are you starting to see things happening more on the AI side?
So the blessing and curse of AI is that it can do things very quickly and very efficiently, and without the right guardrails, it's going to do bad things quickly and efficiently. And so, I've had multiple clients, hey, we want to use AI to call people and talk to them or send them text messages. Okay, do you have their permission to do any of those things? No, we'll get it when we call them. That's not how that works. So, so they're eager, right? They're excited. They want to apply AI, and AI could certainly do that very quickly, right? And a massive amount of liability for the company. So that's right. People, they see the promise of AI, they want to implement it, but they don't think that these data privacy laws were written in the 60s, and the 70s, and the 80s, right? So, and very enterprising plaintiff attorneys, no offense if there's any in the room, but they will find ways to apply those laws.
60-year-old law.
Like, this is real life. I am defending a number of lawsuits where my clients are being sued for their AI chatbot, and the law that they're suing under has the word telegraph in it.
So a law from the 1880s, basically is what you're saying.
Right, yeah. And this law was written to prevent people from attaching devices to telegraph wires to intercept, right?
Is that Caleb?
Workforce security, FCA, yeah. So they're like, oh, well, that applies to web chat. Yeah. Exactly, yeah. That's exactly what they were thinking of when they wrote that law.
Do you think the laws will ever catch up with the reality of AI?
No, well, first of all, the laws never catch up with technology in general. We're constantly implementing laws that we're trying to enforce laws that were written, the foundational law of social media was written in the late 1990s, right? So,
Nothing's changed.
The law will never catch up, right? Yeah, so the law is never going to catch up to technological innovation. It's just not feasible.
Right.
But we do our best. We're just now getting social media laws, right? So.
Draconian.
Yeah, we've kind of gone the other extreme there, but pesky First Amendment keeps knocking that stuff down.
Yeah, we'll get rid of that soon enough. Any questions? Because I could go on, but please.
Kind of a little bit of a different track question, but how would you implement within into an AI policy a certain amount of enforcement against not only your own team but potentially preventing the craziness that it is right now, prompt injection essentially. I don't know if you've ever gotten that contract. We actually got a contract recently that had white text trying to bypass in case we used an AI to analyze that contract. We noticed it because we printed it. Paper, the same day. But had we put that through a model in a specific environment, you would have potentially sent back the real information. And it's kind of an odd situation. We've got contact with that vendor.
I was about to say, I would consider that hacking.
But yeah, I guess it goes more than into electronic crime.
I personally have not dealt with that situation. I did have a guy call once from a parent whose son had been who got failed a class because the teacher had put white text in the discussion post, and when they copy and pasted it into ChatGPT to do their work, the output had certain phrases that alerted the teacher that they had cheated. So, but yeah.
How could the student sue if they?
Yeah, we didn't sue.
Oh.
That's like calling after a drug deal goes down.
Yeah.
Someone stole my drink.
Yeah. This was supposed to be a whole kilo.
But I think you hit the nail on the head. Was the teacher committing an electronic crime?
Yeah. So in that case, probably not. Right? So because it was their material. Right? It was their material. So and it was not intended to be cut and pasted into a tool. But a lot of vendor contracts in general we're adding AI tool usage or data restrictions to every agreement that we're drafting now, or at least trying to get them in. Companies just I'll end on this is that vendor management in the IT space is by far one of your biggest risks. So many of my clients, we can do everything perfect, and they have a vendor that is not upholding those same standards, and the data gets breached from the vendor, and my client has to eat that liability. Even if the contract says, hey, if we have a breach, you're responsible, but then the company goes out of business and you're still stuck with it. So vendor management, number one biggest concern for my clients.
And very often it's the vendor's vendor, right?
Right.
It's 3 levels down, where those people aren't doing what they're supposed to do. They're embedded into the platform you're actually contracting with. So from an AI perspective, I can see that happening
So
now.
we're always looking at indemnification, insurance requirements, all those things that, hey, if there's a problem, you're responsible, and if there's a problem, you're responsible, and you have the means to pay for it.
From an organization that is not a large organization, it's a smaller organization, but is doing a lot of things with AI as we all are. To create this policy and to follow, like where should they start? If you look at larger organizations that can form that committee of the top 6 individuals in the company versus, a company that has 50 employees that's run by a family, like where should they start?
So, your 25-person business, you have someone who's doing HR, you have someone who's doing IT, and you have someone who's in an executive role. That's enough to at least start the conversation. And, whatever your legal counsel, whether it's internal or external, to kind of close that loop. And then, you can outsource, some of this training, through HR modules and that sort of thing. But you have people doing those roles. Get them around the kitchen table if that's the size of your organization, and just start writing out kind of what we want to happen and how can we make it happen.
If we had to use an AI tool to write that policy for us, which one should we use? Are there any other questions for Tim?
I have a question about data policy. So nowadays, you can see there are many tools who can write email stuff for you. So for example, if I have I want to send emails to 2,000 clients, something like that, and I want to write different emails for all of them. So I cannot write that. So I need the end. So there are paid tools available, and they ask you to upload your client base. So you have to upload it. Data privacy is the biggest part of any organization. It is our data. So we upload it. We trust that vendor or organization like that write this stuff and send to people. But what if they leak it or they do something with that data? So how we can prevent ourselves from doing any kind of mistake or save our data or ourselves from that data privacy leak or something like that? What should we do about that?
Yeah, so in that situation, as you would any vendor, right? What is their policy? How long do they retain the data? If there is a breach, what is their obligation back to you? So those are the things that you would look at in your terms of service. Do they have are they using that data to train their own tool, right? How long are they keeping the data? What do they do with it afterwards? And if something goes wrong, will they step in and make you whole?
Sometimes they have their for terms and conditions, 20 pages or something like that.
Yeah,
It's very
right.
difficult to read everything, and sometimes you just skip it. So,
Yep.
But I don't know how to prevent ourselves from being artificial. Maybe we can also
Yeah.
for us.
I'll make a commercial now. Hire an attorney who knows what those things say.
All right. Anything, anyone else? Any other comments? Josh, you think you can bring me up one of the mugs, please? Right there. You have a question?
So did you take out student loans, and then if so, how old were you when you paid them off?
Well, I should have them all paid off. It'll be about 197. So I only have to work for about another 600 years and I'll be all. No, but one of the, all case, one of the beauties about working at the university.
So Tim and I are actually, if you're interested in this topic, we're going to be on another panel that Kelly Cronenberg is hosting on the 26th, downtown Fort Lauderdale. So let me know and we can get you signed up to join us there for that. All right, Tim, thank you so much. It's always